you brought your own containers of water. These things are very dry here, and it's a, what do they call it, a fluid situation. My colleague, I think, has very correctly and absolutely clearly defined what has happened. And usually people hear this series of things that happen that are shocking, and people, tend to believe that can't happen in America. But what he's talking about and what he described is absolutely the truth. And I want to just share a few thoughts in terms of emergency managers and the loss of democracy and what it means. There's a concept, and I don't know if it's true or not, but if you put a frog in a pot and the water is cool, and you turn the water up a little bit at a time, that dumb frog will stay there and will boil to death because the incremental changes in temperature won't right away appeal to the frog to say, get the hell out the pot. All right, I don't know if that's true or not, because it sounds like a bad rap on frogs. I don't know. All right, but I do know that in history there are some analogous kinds of things that have happened. You can't incinerate thousands, millions of Jewish people unless you put forward a national narrative that this group of people is something wrong with them. You have to do all that first. You can't pick Africans up and bring them across the rivers and the seas and just do bad things for hundreds of years unless you create a national narrative that says, well, this must be acceptable. You can't slaughter Native Americans all over the place unless you create a national narrative to say this is acceptable because, and then you have to list those reasons. Here in Detroit and in Wayne County, we had some things. We had a Dodge Main. We had Huber Avenue Foundry. We had Lynch Road Assembly. We had Kelsey Hayes, Max Stamping. We had a lot of factories. Some 400,000 manufacturing jobs have disappeared in this city. And I'm talking about jobs where people were able to buy houses, build houses, buy cars, develop middle-income neighborhoods everywhere. We didn't just keep that here. We took those things all over the place. And that kind of momentum and whatnot stopped along the way because of technology. A lot of you are here today that are techno gurus and experts, and you got a smartphone and you whip a check across it and it'll take the money right out of the account and all this kind of stuff. But I remember before ATM cards came, and you go to the bank and the teller was in there, and that would be Miss Ann and Mr. George, and you'd say, how you doing? And you'd hear about their families, and what's happening with their children, and what's happening with their grandparents. And then I got an ATM card, and I started to use it. Then I started to knock on the window, and I would wave to these folks. But I didn't go inside the bank anymore. And then things changed. I got this new device, and it moves across. This technology is a wonderful thing. I want an automated maid to come to my house. I can't wait for that to happen. But in the hands of these corporations and their no good trifling girlfriends we call the banks, we are in trouble. This is a national paradigm shift. Folks are not needed to work anymore. And what do you do when 400,000 jobs disappear and 1.4, 1.5 million people that used to live in Detroit, now it's 700,000 folks that live here, and the jobs pay 5, 6, 7, and I mean that because for whatever reason, waiters and waitresses think that they can make $2 or $3 an hour, and that's okay. What kind of crazy place is this? And what we've got is all of this scenario being set up. The national narrative about Detroit is just what he said. Problems and whatnot exist, and it's because we're just too stupid. Yeah, there are dumb black people live in Detroit. These dumb Native Americans, they're stupid too. These Latin Americans, folks from Latino and Hispanic backgrounds, they have no sense. And outside of the Middle East, the largest organization or organized groups of folks that have a Middle Eastern descent live here. They're just as dumb. And so therefore, the government has to step in and take over your right to vote. Now, the fact that there are 17 municipalities, cities, and schools that are now operated and managed by emergency managers, and of the 17, 15 of those entities are predominantly located in places where there are people of color. How come nobody across the country stood up to say anything about this? You knew it was wrong. They knew it was wrong. We all knew it was wrong. But we don't say anything because that national narrative is everywhere. Well, you know, the black folks, they're not doing right, they're not thinking, and nobody said anything. These are the small steps. That's how it starts. You incinerate people, but you do all this national narrative first, so when you get to killing folks and taking away people's right to vote and taking away people's right to have a house and not taking away water, people won't say anything because they'll be thinking if I speak up, somebody will call me a Detroit lover. Somebody will call me an urban resident lover. Somebody will call me one of those ugly things. So I better step back and be quiet. I'm going to say this last couple of things and then go on to my rest of my colleagues. This circumstance that's happening in Detroit is so insidious. I'm telling you, I don't know how much longer we're going to stay on this side of the nonviolent fence. At some time, fairly soon, somebody's going to jump up and say, I'm tired of you taking away my right to vote. I'm tired of voting for elected officials that have no power. I'm tired of the disrespect that continues day after day. I listen to Orr, the emergency manager, who gets $1,000 an hour. $1,000 an hour. In an 8-hour day, that trick gets $8,000 in a day. A welfare recipient and one child, family of two, in a year gets $5,040 in a year. It's wrong. It's wrong. And I'm saying to you that I'm so happy that Netroots Nation is here, and I want you to be able to carry this message out. We're not dumb. We're not ignorant. We're industrious. We're sick of this mess. If we can find one of these mother scratchers in the alley, we beat them till they cry. We tell you they're just too fast for us, but we're looking for them. Not that we ain't trying to find them. But this is so insidious. So when we talk about an emergency manager, it is a dictator. And that's how it starts. Little bitty things, little bitty steps, little bitty motions that take away your rights, take away this right, take away that right. In Boston, horrible thing happened, bombings went on. The police decided we're going to go door to door in Boston and look at people's houses because maybe those fiends are hiding in your basement. No knocks, no warrants. We knock on the door and we let him in. That's how it starts, a little bit at a time. And before you look and before you know, there's a tidal wave of everybody trying to tell you you don't have the right to eat, you don't have the right to have water, you don't have the right to have housing. It's all right to spit at little children coming across the borders from Guatemala. All kind of bad things happen. Last thing, who was it who said for bad things to happen, all that's necessary is for good people to stand and say nothing? We got a scream of silence going on. I'm so glad you're in Detroit because we're not being quiet. We're screaming to the highest hills. My name is Maureen Taylor. I'm state chairperson of Michigan Welfare Rights, and I welcome you. Thank you so much.